Hi everybody, and welcome to the Sci4 module for Android SDK Manager. So in this tutorial we'll be going over how to download and install SDK Manager and how to get a AVD in the manager opened and booted. So first I'm going to go ahead and go to developer.android.com/SDK/index. This link is available in the resources, and I'm going to go ahead and download the SDK Manager. So I'll go here, click download the SDK, and I actually have done this, but you would check your license agreement and select the architecture of Windows that you are running, and you would download the 400 megabyte file, after which you would get a zip file, which you would have to then extract to receive these three sub items. So we have Eclipse, SDK, and SDK Manager. So for the scope of the forensics part, or for Sci4, we'll only be focusing on the SDK Manager. So to go ahead and open that up, we're going to go ahead and just double click SDK Manager on Windows. At this point, it is important to note that SDK Manager is available for all platforms, including Linux and Mac. Usually on the Google website, it will auto-detect the operating system you're running. Otherwise, it'll provide you with options to select the version of SDK Manager you'd wish to download. So I've gone ahead and opened up the SDK Manager here, and looks like there isn't a default update that it would like me to do. So I'm going to click Install One Package. It looks like it's a USB driver to make sure all my Android devices, when connected, work properly. I'm going to go ahead and accept the license and click Install. Now we're at the part where we're going to go ahead and get a working image in the actual machine and get a virtual phone emulated. So I have a smartphone from a forensic investigation. This is from the Seesaw 2012 preliminary challenge. It's the smartphone provided, and so I'm gonna go ahead and extract that to my desktop in order to mount it in the SDK Manager. At this point, I'm going to point out that the SDK Path is always displayed at the top of the SDK Manager. So in this case, my SDK path is C users, my username, desktop, ADT bundle, Windows, so I just kept the default directory /SDK. So when I place my SDK files, or in this case the Android virtual device files, I'm going to simply place it in that directory. So in my desktop, I'm going to go into the ADT bundle folder. So we're in my desktop, the ADT bundle folder, and I'm gonna go into SDK. So this shows where the files are. So now I'm actually going to go to Tools and Manage AVDs. So this shows the AVD Manager, and where we actually want to place the AVD is also located here at the top of Android virtual devices, located at C users username.android/AVD. So what I want to do is I want to navigate to that. So I'm going to go ahead and type it as I see it. C users IBP.android/AVD. So now I have as you can see, a Nexus 7 INI file in there. It's a configuration file, which is why we have the Nexus 7 trying to load here. However, it's failing because it doesn't know what information to pull. So I'm going to delete this file because we don't need it for this for the course of this tutorial. And in fact, what I'm going to do is bring in a new AVD. So on my desktop, I have a smartphone seized, and I'm going to put that in that path we have established. So username.android /AVD. I'm going to go ahead and paste the files that I copied from my desktop. So now we have a stratos.avd, so that's the phone. We have a configuration file. The DS store is a Mac equivalent for thumbs.db, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. That's not necessary. So now we have the AVD with the various files in it, with the image files, and we have a INI file. So I'm going to go ahead and edit the INI file to get us some information. So here we learn two things. We learn the target, or the API used by this device, is Android 16. Also, we learn the path to the AVD. So both of these things actually need to be addressed in order for us to get this AVD mounted. So I'm going to do save. And actually, if I go back to the Android Virtual Device Manager and I hit refresh, you can see I have Stratos now mounted. However, it's not being recognized at all. So what I'm going to do first is get Android API 16. To do that, I'll go back into the SDK Manager, closing out of the AVD Manager. So I'll be at this screen, and now I will select Android 4.1.2 API 16 and install the 7 packages. Accept the license and click install. So this will download very quickly all the components of API 16. So just to quickly go over, it'll download the SDK platform, the samples, the ARM system architecture, the x86 architecture, Google APIs, and the sources for the Android version. And it'll download them, unzip them, and install them by default. So after this, we will be completely ready to go. With the image, we'll just have to change the path. So we'll just give it a quick second to install, and then we'll go ahead and change the path. Now that we have the API installed, we're going to go ahead and check out Tools, Manage AVDs, and we see now that the Android AVD Manager recognizes that the CPU is an ARM chip, and it recognizes the platform at the API level as well as the target name. This now it can tell and actually differentiate what type of system and software this is, and you don't have any question marks anymore. So now, however, you still see there's a red X indicating that the device failed to load. So we're going to click Details and check out the error. So now the error is the user that created this AVD still left his path in there. So we have users, the user's name, .android/avd. So this is all updated. However, this looks like a MAC address to me, a MAC file folder path. So I'm just going to actually go ahead and change the path in that INI file I mentioned before. So that's in my username .android /avd. I'm going to edit. And the edit can be done with something as simple as Notepad. And all I'm going to do is actually keep the .android. And I'm going to, do C users /IBP Android, and I'm going to change these slashes from // to backslashes. That should work. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out after saving, Control S. And now you see once I press refresh, it's a valid Android virtual device. So we've changed the configuration settings necessary for us to mount this device successfully, and now I'm just going to go ahead and click Start and leave the default options and click Launch. So it's starting the emulator, and you should see a screen that simulates Android buttons, such as here. As you can see, since it's an image, it's taking some time to get loaded up. So as you can see, all the buttons here are simulated for you. There is a keyboard present along with camera buttons and volume buttons and power buttons, what you would find typically on an Android phone. It's important to note, it does take quite a few minutes, and even may take a couple more minutes than normal, depending on the RAM and the environment you're running in. I would recommend to run the AVD Manager and the SDK Manager in a host operating system, and to avoid running it in a virtual machine, as it's been known to slow down the virtual machine as well, slow down itself in the booting process because of limited resource issues. So we're just going to let the device boot. So now that the device is booted, we get the current date and time, and we see that the device is up, and we are actually able to interact with the device and go ahead and unlock it. And now we can scroll through it and treat it as a virtual machine Android device. So we can scroll through the apps. On the first few seconds, or even for a couple of minutes after boot, it'll be a little slow as it gets used to the system. So now I see all the apps here, and we can scroll through them. So this is part of the Seesaw challenge. So there is actually settings configured here ready to go. Usually this would be done to test applications without ruining phones, so this is a good way to do that. So SWAT for Sci4, and this is how AVDs are mounted in Android SDK Manager for Windows.